Linux is all about freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom of customization, and apparently freedom to create the same operating system 500 times. I don't hate Linux. I hate what the Linux distro ecosystem has become. Let's start with the obvious problem. There are way too many Linux distros. At some point, choice becomes noise. And if you're new to Linux, you'll feel overwhelmed. You Google best Linux distro and suddenly you're staring at 25 options that all claim to be perfect for beginners. And what's the difference between them? One has like a blue wallpaper, other one has a slightly different dock, one calls itself minimal. What's that supposed to mean? Here's the thing most people don't realize. Most Linux distros aren't actually independent. They are built on top of a few core ones. You've got base, then a distro built on that, and then another distro built on top of that. It's like a pyramid of copy and paste. At the bottom, a handful of projects are doing the real work. And at the top, you've got new distros that are basically a theme and a pre-installed browser. And somehow that's considered a new operating system. The truth is, few core distros are carrying the entire ecosystem. They handle security updates, package management, stability, infrastructure, all the hard, boring, important stuff. Meanwhile, a lot of derivative distros are just remixing. New logo, new name, faster inclusion of newer packages version into the repos, and don't get me wrong, customization is great, but at some point you have to ask, who's actually building and who's just repackaging? What's even weirder is how often the original projects get ignored. New users are almost never told, hey, maybe try a base distro and learn how things actually work. Instead, they are handled a polished distro with training wheels. So people end up saying they use Linux, but they've never really interacted with the underlying system. And that's actually how it should be, but with the way Linux works, it's not that easy. Every few weeks or months you can see headlines titled like new gaming distro, or this distro works best for Nvidia, or try out this in 2026. And 2 weeks later, new distro, new video, and the same cycle all over again. At this point you are not learning Linux, you are just speedrunning the installers. What I'm about to tell you now I think is the most important point of this whole video. Because package management and release cycle is a big issue in every distro, it creates a large inconsistency where one distro can have a core library in version 2.0, but the other distro may have the same library upgraded to 3.0, breaking some backwards compatibility. This is why projects like Docker thrive, by the way. Containers come with their own environment. On desktop Linux, instead of Docker, Flatpak or Snaps are more popular. But they come with their own problems, because they try to solve multiple different problems at once. And in the end, they also require some in-depth knowledge in case something goes south. Since a lot of software on Linux relies on shared libraries and don't come pre-packaged with their own dependencies, this creates a problem. A lot of that burden is shifted towards developers who simply cannot maintain builds for every single distro in existence.
We make binaries for Windows and OS X. We basically don't make binaries for Linux. Why? Because making binaries for Linux desktop applications is a major fucking pain in the ass, right? You don't make binaries for Linux, you make binaries for Fedora 19, Fedora 20, maybe there's even like RHEL 5 from 10 years ago.
Another issue, inconsistency. Every distro does things just a tiny bit differently. Different package managers, different config paths, different defaults. So when something breaks, and it will break, good luck following a guide that was written for a different distro. Instead of a shared ecosystem, you get fragmentation. Everyone is using Linux, but nobody's really using the same system. And let's talk about the hard-to-swallow pill. A lot of distros just die. They are started by one person or a small team. They gain a bit of hype and then they disappear. No updates, no security patches, no support. And now your operating system is basically abandonware. Your OS shouldn't depend on whether someone still feels like maintaining it. All of this leads to one big issue. fragmentation. Instead of thousands of developers improving a few solid systems, we have thousands of people splitting their effort across endless variations. Imagine if that energy was focused. Fewer distros, stronger foundations and better support. Instead, we get another Ubuntu-based remix with a different font, or Arch-based remix with some packages that come pre-installed. Now, to be fair, some smaller projects are actually mature and have a use case, though from my experience that's happening mostly server-side, in containers and Kubernetes clusters. In my opinion, most of the desktop distros race to have their Steam and NVIDIA drivers packages pre-installed in hundreds of thousands of different ways. For every genuinely new idea, there are dozens of distros that exist for no real reason. And also, I think this is why SteamOS is such a big thing. It has a big, firm backing behind it, which ensures that it will be well supported and developed with a certain approach in mind. Their focus will not be printer drivers, their focus will be games and gaming, which creates a bit of a different problem, but I hope this will be solved in time. So, in the end, I don't hate Linux. I work with it daily, by choice. But the distro ecosystem, it's messy. Too many divergent solutions and at the same time, too much duplication. Not enough focus, and honestly, the harsh truth is that Linux wasn't designed and was not developed to be a desktop first and foremost system. Distros try to change that, but for me, they always strike very weird tones, like modifying the kernel so default secure boot keys no longer work, or still not providing mainstream experience by giving you too much choice during installation. Like, seriously, compare Windows installer and Linux installer. And also, to be honest with you all, this piece was inspired by recent Linus from LTT Linux challenge. I think that the LTT team, while trying to approach the subject as noobs, honestly did nothing wrong. I think this sort of approach is necessary and is also worthwhile when it comes to testing. But I think it highlights that the current state of Linux desktop remains unchanged and pretty much as it was 10 years ago. It's just that now with the advent of Steam and Proton, they provide an abstraction layer where many typical problems can be swept under it. Also, I already have my NAS enclosure. Sadly, I am still waiting for the rest of the components that I need. So until then, bye!